it new?
Yeah, but I already recorded some.
Is it full?
Is it like that?
Yeah.
All right, you ready? Okay, here we go. Question 1, what is the power of judicial review established in Marbury versus Madison 1803? 2, the Fourth Amendment contains 2 clauses. What one-word description defines each of these clauses? Blank, the blank clause and the blank clause. 3, the traditional U.S. Supreme Court approach to Fourth Amendment cases was to stress the primacy of the blank clause. The modern approach is to stress the primacy of the blank clause. 4, prior to Katz versus United States 1967, analysis of Fourth Amendment violations depended upon the application of the law of blank. The Katz case abolished this approach and substituted the doctrine of the expectation of blank. 5, the Aguilar-Spinelli test of probable cause based on information received from an informant has 2 elements, name them. 6, according to the U.S. Supreme Court, the target of a search may always invoke his Fourth Amendment rights and seek the exclusion of evidence illegally seized. 7, the Sixth Amendment embodies 9 separate rights, which collectively constitute the right to a fair trial. Name 4 of these. 8, name the 2 alternative methods by which a person may be charged with a felony. 9, a moving vehicle may be stopped and frisked. True or false? 10, when a person is illegally arrested, evidence seized incident to that arrest must be suppressed. True or false? The court cannot assume jurisdiction over the person. True or false? 11, according to the U.S. Supreme Court, police must have at least reasonable suspicion before they initiate foot pursuit of a person. True or false? Before they demand identification. True or false? 12, in applying the open fields doctrine, what is the curtilage? 13, which one of the U.S. Bill of Rights, Amendments 1 through 8, was also included in the English Bill of Rights of 1689? 14, in Stack versus Boyle, 1951, the U.S. Supreme Court gave 3 reasons for the right to bail. Name 2. 15, the U.S. Supreme Court has made it easier to waive rights under A, the Fourth Amendment, B, the Fifth Amendment, C, the Sixth Amendment, D, the Eighth Amendment. 16, the Berger Court, in its attempts to roll back the due process revolution, held that the Fourth Amendment should not be incorporated. True or false? That the exclusionary rule is not a constitutional right. True or false? That the exclusionary rule did not apply to errors by court personnel which lead to false arrest. True or false? 17, what type of evidence does the Fifth Amendment privilege against self-incrimination not protect a person from being forced to produce? 18, police do not have to give Miranda warnings to question a suspect arrested for a misdemeanor. True or false? 19, the admission at trial of hearsay evidence may violate the defendant's Sixth Amendment right to confront his accusers. True or false? 20, what is the power of jury nullification? 21, only a person who is a member of a minority group may complain about the prosecution's exclusion of all members of that minority group from the trial jury through the use of peremptory challenges. True or false? 22, what clause in the 14th Amendment has been used by the U.S. Supreme Court to apply by incorporation of the Bill of Rights to restrain the activities of state and local law enforcement? A, Privileges and Immunities Clause. B, Due Process Clause. C, Equal Protection Clause. 23, according to the U.S. Supreme Court, the Miranda warnings required to be given before custodial interrogation may be conducted are not based on the Constitution. True or false? 24, defendant has no right to counsel at a photo array under any circumstances. True or false? 25, a prosecutor's decision whether to bring charges against a person is not subject to constitutional challenge. True or false? 26, when a defendant has received Miranda warnings and says he does not wish to answer questions, he may still be questioned about another crime. True or false? If he asks for a lawyer, he may not be asked about other crimes. True or false? 27, what is the process called during which the trial judge and counsel question potential jurors to uncover bias? 28, how soon after a person is arrested without a warrant must he be given a first appearance or probable cause hearing? A, 12 hours. B, 24 hours. C, 48 hours. D, 72 hours. 29, right to trial by jury under the Sixth Amendment attaches circle 1. A, only if a felony is charged. B, only if the judge actually imposes any jail time. C, if any offense charged authorizes at least 6 months in jail. D, if all the offenses charged collectively authorize at least 6 months in jail. 30, right to counsel under the Sixth Amendment applies to persons charged with misdemeanors. Circle 1. A, if the law permits any jail time to be imposed. B, if the law permits at least 30 days in jail to be imposed. C, if the court actually imposes any jail time. 31, right to indictment by grand jury is guaranteed by what constitutional amendment? 32, right to indictment by grand jury has not been incorporated into the 14th Amendment due process clause, true or false? 33, in the preamble of the U.S. Constitution, place the following in order in which they appear. A, to ensure domestic tranquility. B, to establish justice. C, to secure the blessings of liberty. 34, there are no constitutional limits placed on the use of peremptory challenges to excuse potential jurors without cause, true or false. 35, what is the difference between vindictive prosecution and selective prosecution? 36, from what ancient document did our modern concept of due process evolve? 38, 37, 37, it's 237, what? No, 37. Identify two of the four parts of the U.S. Constitution as amended which guarantee trial by jury. 38. According to the U.S. Supreme Court, reasonable suspicion to trigger investigative detention cannot be based on a series of facts, each of which standing alone is consistent with innocent conduct, true or false. 39. The New Mexico Supreme Court has adopted a subjective-objective hybrid test of entrapment. 40. According to the Rehnquist Court, which is the most jealously guarded under the Fourth Amendment? A, bodily integrity. B, dwelling. C, vehicle. 41. According to the U.S. Supreme Court, police may not conduct a roadblock for general law enforcement purposes, true or false. 42. The New Mexico Supreme Court requires trial courts to use the Aguilar-Spinelli test, true or false. 43. The subjective test of entrapment is concerned with the defendant's blank to commit the crime. 44. The theory that Congress has implied an entrapment defense in its criminal statutes is an example of a blank blank, 2 words. 45. The U.S. Supreme Court majority has adopted an objective-subjective hybrid test of entrapment, circle 1. 46. For the purposes of the Sixth Amendment, criminal prosecution begins at what point? 47. What event marks the end of a criminal prosecution for Sixth Amendment purposes? 48. What justification does the Border Patrol need to search a vehicle stopped at a fixed checkpoint? A, nothing. B, reasonable suspicion. C, probable cause. 49. Identify 2 factors during the retention phase which can lead to inaccurate eyewitness identification. 50. In a preliminary examination, what is the standard of proof for the magistrate to bind the case over the district court for trial? 51. Identify 2 of the 3 exceptions to the fruit of the poisonous tree doctrine. 52. Identify 2 factors during the retrieval stage which can affect the quality of eyewitness identification. 53. According to the U.S. Supreme Court, voluntary statements taken from a defendant without proper Miranda warnings may be used by the prosecution in his case in chief, yes or no. B, to impeach the defendant's testimony at trial, yes or no. C, to impeach the testimony of another defense witness, yes or no. D, to develop other evidence to incriminate the defendant, yes or no. 54, identify 2 alternatives to the exclusionary rule to deal with illegal or unconstitutional conduct by law enforcement officers. 55, when Miranda warnings are properly administered, approximately what percentage of suspects give a statement anyway? A, 20%, B, 40%, C, 60%, D, 80%. 56, Judge Samuel Alito, nominated by the President to replace Justice O'Connor, is best described as crime control civil rights oriented, circle 1. 57, according to studies, what percentage of miscarriage of justice is related to incorrect eyewitness identification? All right, so that's Jenny's 17.4%. I will count that correct on this test. All right, I think it's 78.6, but I'll reconsider that. So either A or D is correct on question 57. So those of you that get it wrong got no excuse. 58, when a pretrial identification of a suspect by a witness cannot be used because the suspect's rights were violated, the prosecution must show a blank blank before the witness will be allowed to identify the defendant in court, 2 words. 59, as originally passed by the House of Representatives in 1789, the Bill of Rights applied to state as well as federal officers. Why did the Senate change it to apply only to the federal government? 60, a suspect may resist the production of financial records because the government subpoena is compelling him to be a witness against himself, true or false? 61, when police employ an unnecessarily suggested method of pretrial confrontation, what constitutional right of the suspect is violated? 62, studies have shown that eyewitnesses who are most certain of their identification of a suspect are most often guilty of mistaken identification, true or false? 63, the area around the suspect which may be searched incident to his arrest without a warrant is delimited by the reach and grab rule. 64, name the 9 justices of the U.S. Supreme Court in order of seniority on the court. So I give you all of the justices. Next to the justice's name, put the numeral with a 1 being the longest serving justice. and 9 being the newest. Place the Chief Justice in the order of appointment and not as number 1. So in other words, for purposes of tonight, I had the Chief be number 1, but forget that. For purposes of this question, fit him into the order in which they have been appointed to the court. So number 2 is actually number 1, and then you go down until you get to the Chief. And so your answer is going to be a bunch of numbers in the right-hand column. 65, which justice was born Jewish but no longer practices that faith? 66, identify 2 of the members of the Supreme Court who are practicing Catholics, not the ones who were born Catholics but aren't anymore. 67, according to the U.S. Supreme Court, holding a suspect charged with a non-capital felony without bail solely because he's alleged to be a danger to society is unconstitutional, true or false? 68, who was the only serving justice who previously served as a trial court judge? 69, who is the youngest serving Supreme Court justice? 70, at birth, which justice was born into the greatest poverty? 71, which serving justice is the first member of his or her ethnic group to serve on the court? 72, which serving justice was raised a Catholic but is now an evangelical Christian? 73, which serving justice was a Rhodes Scholar? 74, under what circumstances may a criminal trial proceed even though the defendant is not present? 75, criminal procedure is a branch of constitutional law, true or false? 76, identify 3 rights of Englishmen included in the Bill of Rights. 77, approximately what percentage of felony cases actually proceed to trial? A, 50%, B, 20%, C, 10%, D, 3%. 78, what is another name for a grand jury indictment? 79, what is a motion in limine? 80, under the 8th Amendment, there is an absolute right to bail, true or false? 81, in the federal sentencing guidelines, what is the bias? 82, the grand jury is part of A, judicial branch, B, executive branch, C, legislative branch, D, none of the above. 83, what is the difference to a witness between use immunity and transactional immunity? 84, grand jury indictment may be based entirely on hearsay, true or false? 85, a grand jury may consider illegally seized evidence, true or false? 86, identify 3 differences between the adversarial and inquisitorial systems of criminal justice. 87, the New Mexico Supreme Court has recognized a duty of the state to preserve evidence which may help the defense, true or false? 88, the 6th Amendment guarantee of a jury of one's peers does not require that each juror be of the same social class as the defendant, true or false? 89, the state has the right to a fair trial, true or false? 90, the presumption of innocence is part of the U.S. Constitution, true or false? 91, the requirement that the state prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt is part of the U.S. Constitution, true or false? 92, according to the U.S. Supreme Court in the 6th Amendment Confrontation Clause, every defendant has an absolute right to require every witness to testify in his personal presence, true or false? 93, the admission of hearsay evidence may violate the defendant's 6th Amendment right to confront his accusers, true or false? 94, according to the U.S. Supreme Court, what is the minimum number constitutionally required for a criminal jury? A, 12, B, 10, C, 6, D, 4. 95, according to the U.S. Supreme Court, the right to trial by jury requires that any verdict in a criminal case be unanimous, true or false? 96, according to the U.S. Supreme Court, if the criminal trial jury has less than 12 members, its verdict must be unanimous, true or false? 97, according to Professor Lon Fuller, what are 3 attributes of the rule of law? And the last question, 98, has all the Supreme Court justices listed and then has little thumbnail sketches. And you have to match. There's a thumbnail bio sketch for each one. So one of them, I'll just give you one of them. This Harvard graduate, born in Buffalo, was a U.S. Supreme Court law clerk, worked in the U.S. Solicitor General's office, and served as a federal appeals court judge. And you have to match that up with the justice. All right? So that's it.
Is it going to be open book?
Hell no. That's what's fun about it.
I like 200.
Didn't work again.